Welcome everyone to season 4, episode 131 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host, Yash Bika, joined by my co-host Tyler Chan. And this video, or at least podcast at least, is a bit interesting because we're actually recording this on a Thursday morning. We usually don't record our podcast on the morning time. Usually we try to go for late afternoon or in the night after we're done with work, but some scheduling issues, so now we're recording an early morning pod. So excuse us if we're still trying to wake up in the middle of the podcast, but this is the best time that worked for us. But we're excited because actually some big news dropped in the Premier League this morning with Aston Villa announcing Steven Gerrard as their new head coach, the former Liverpool legend who used to coach Rangers in the Scottish Premier League and took them to and won the title for them, and actually won the title over Celtic, who had like a 9-year winning streak, winning the title in the Scottish League. Stephen Gerrard came in, won the title for Rangers in that one last season, and like it was a crazy record he had. But now he's back in the Premier League, one of like the hotter names in the coaching world, and now he has a chance to basically see if he's ready to be maybe in the coming years be Klopp's successor at Liverpool if he does a really good job with Villa.
It was really interesting to see from basically a week out, see Dean Smith, the former Aston Villa manager,
Mm-hmm.
get sacked because of just a poor string of games, basically 5 losses in a row, which for Villa, I mean, back in the days, it's like, all right, that's like kind of normal. But I guess these days, they have higher ambitions, and also 5 games now, if they start seeing a trend, be like, you know what, maybe it'd be best to get rid of the manager now and then get in some new blood to maybe help with a avoiding relegation later on in the season, because like
Mm-hmm.
you never know, like these could be an ongoing trend, and bring in Stevie G, it could be something good for them, because ever since he lost Jack Grealish too to Man City, it's like, man, Aston Villa haven't been as strong as before, which kind of makes sense, but
Mm-hmm.
also maybe they do need that new manager, that new kind of vision, just to see, all right, how else can we set up now to continue to find success and try to get back into those European competitions again. So Stevie G, as Yash just mentioned, he was doing really well in the Scottish Premier League. He basically brought Rangers out of the grave. Like, they're kind of struggling as the main Celtic rival. Like, they weren't really putting much of a fight for the past several seasons before he came in. But after Stevie G brought in some loan players from Liverpool, brought in some former Premier League players into the fray and into that starting 11, they started doing a lot better. And, it's a little weird to kind of, you know, I would say, see and judge how Stevie G actually was doing, because it is the Scottish Premier League, and
Yeah.
there's really just one main powerhouse, which was Celtic. So it's like, was he actually doing well, or was it kind of just a fluke? And I feel like as Aston
Wait,
Villa,
he did do pretty
Mhm,
good in the Europa League. He did get some upsets.
that's
Uh,
true. And that's also, it is like a one-off competition at the same time. So it's kind of like a
mhm.
Jose Mourinho effect. Maybe it's like he's just really good at those. But
Mhm.
I mean, I would say Europa League, he did have some pretty decent results. I can't think of them any particular ones off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
he basically did pretty well there. But hmm, this Villa gig is going to be a very good kind of measuring tape, a litmus test to see if it's actually going to pay off.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested to see how he does. And I don't know what the goal for Stevie G is for Aston Villa right now, but I would assume at least it is avoiding relegation and then hopefully going for a Europa League spot if they could.
Mhm.
But it'd be cool. And then it'd be cool to see Stevie G back in the Premier League as a manager, of course. And a big calendar date to mark on your calendars is December 11th, Liverpool versus Aston Villa, when he returns to see Liverpool, the old side. It's gonna be weird. It was even weird just seeing him in those photos of him holding the Aston Villa scarves and all those colors and the jersey. I'm like, oh gosh, it's kind of like when he went to LA Galaxy during the end
Mhm.
of his career. I'm like, that's just weird. I can't. It's like seeing Messi in a PSG jersey. It just doesn't look right. But
Mhm.
we'll see how he goes.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how he does. I think for at least this season, I think the start they've had, I think it maybe puts them out of the running for maybe a European competition. Maybe they could sneak into the Europa Conference League, but I feel like just staying up or getting mid-table would be a decent goal for Stevie G this season. But when he gets past this, I think from the football and the type of play that he was doing at Rangers, I'm excited to see what he does with Aston Villa because if he can perform well here, I know you had mentioned this maybe last season, but the talks of like Jurgen Klopp, obviously Jurgen Klopp is not going to be at Liverpool forever, and right now I think he's still on like a couple more years on his contract, and
Hmm.
whether he resigns like a contract extension, I know, you know, it would be like Liverpool fan lore if Stevie G does well here and then basically has like the Premier League experience, maybe gets close to winning a trophy with Aston Villa, that he comes back. The Liverpool legendary player comes back and basically becomes, a next legendary coach for Liverpool. It doesn't happen all the time. We see like former players that have, legendary status in the game sometimes don't make it as coaches, but that would be a cool one if like maybe if he does really well here, maybe Liverpool start lining him up as the next successor for Klopp.
I would. I mean, he'd have to be a really good manager for Aston Villa to take over for Stevie G. Like, as in, like he has to, have the credentials to get into Champions League with Aston Villa, even like challenge for the title or something crazy. Because like, if you think about it, that's what Klopp did with Dortmund. Like Dortmund, they weren't like to the levels of Aston Villa, where it's like they're kind of just wandering around mid-table. But Klopp helped win Dortmund a title, and then ultimately in the Champions League, like their run that they went through to even make it to, I believe, like the Champions League final.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like that's the bar that's been set. And now since Liverpool are back challenging for the title pretty consistently now, it's like, all right, we need to make sure whoever does come in for Klopp in a few seasons from now has all that credibility and the credentials and the resume to back it.
Hmm.
And it'd be a little foolish to be like, you know what, CVG is a legend, let's just bring him in, because then I don't know, it could be like an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer situation where it's like, oh boy, what do we do? We should have kept David Moyes.
Yeah, it's definitely out there, and that, but like you said, the litmus test is there to see how he does now that he's out of the Scottish Premiership, and see how he does in the Premier League now, with Aston Villa, which is a decently sized club with that's backed Dean Smith with a lot of money. Now let's see if they back Stevie G with a lot of money and what they can
Mhm.
do in terms of transfer situations. But that was the big news that happened today. Stevie G being announced as Aston Villa's manager, but
Woo.
looking, I guess last week. Oh, did you have another
No,
point
I was
on?
just happy.
Oh, yeah. So going into last week's results, as we mentioned on last week's pod, there was a couple big games. The first one, obviously, being the Manchester Derby. I had actually predicted that. I think I predicted that City would win 2-0 or 2-1, and that scoreline ended up coming true, where City dominated Manchester United Old Trafford 2-0. It was pretty much an easy 2-0 win for City. It started off with the Eric Bailly own goal in the first 8 minutes. And then from there, City just was just on cruise control and was just passing around, almost like it was a training, a training,
Exercise.
yeah, a training exercise for them, like Liverpool did to United a couple weeks back in the second half. So it was, Manchester United had literally one shot. I think there was a stat they only had one shot, and they only had maybe six or so possessions in Manchester City's box, which is one of the lowest United have had at Old Trafford against an opponent ever. So it was a pretty damning display. No really enthusiasm in the attack. The three back that Solskjaer had implemented in the Tottenham game, when he implemented the Man City game, the players just looked very lost. They didn't look very cohesive or connected as a unit. And we saw in the second half, maybe in the first 10 minutes, it looked a little bit better when they switched to maybe a back four. But even then, you could tell that the team has just kind of been like shape shifted too much to the point where they're just kind of trying out new things as the season goes. And this just reminds me too much of Jose Mourinho's final season at Manchester United when things weren't going well. So he was just shape shifting the team a lot, where he was playing, at times maybe Ander Herrera as a back three, or Scott McTominay as a back three, playing, a back three, a back four, maybe playing Pogba as a pivot player, then playing Pogba as a cam, then dropping Pogba, then, dropping Lukaku, playing Marcus Rashford and Martial. It was just, there was no cohesion. It was just all kind of, what can I do to maybe save my job for the next week? And right now, I think Solskjaer is kind of on that train of just trying out new things to see what can he do to save his job, or what can he do to get a reaction. And unfortunately, if you do that, that's not really going to win you a title or get you anywhere close to top four, or competing for Champions League spots, because when you're constantly shape shifting the team, there's no really chemistry or link up play that can get formulated, and that's been the big problem with Manchester United is that this season, at least, when Solskjaer has come up against big managers or big teams, he's kind of struggled to kind of match them tactically, and he's just kind of and essentially he's just trying to make do, or he's just trying to make up for the fact that he's not there tactically with those managers, and just trying to maybe rely on the individual quality of his players and putting them up that way. But unfortunately, as we've seen, that's not going to win you a title. And United are just a shell of themselves. But yeah, it was a pretty damning display. It was just not a very good display at all. It was I would say like it was arguably worse than Liverpool because City um, had so many chances, and David De Gea. I mean, he pretty much kept United. He kept the scoreline respectable because he made at least 5 or 6 saves in the first half to keep him in the game. But if City had their scoring boots on, they could have easily made it 6-0, 7-0. It could have been really bad, but City just did not have that final touch to score, and that's the only reason the scoreline is 2-0. So scoreline is deceiving for the performance.
I mean, even it had to help City with Eric Bailly scoring that first own goal,
Yeah,
and it was kind of big props to Eric Bailly. He put one of those like apology tweets, and he put his own. I saw
yeah. Put his
he
own
put his
pitch
own picture of
of his
him
own.
scoring the own goal.
Oh, I just don't understand it.
That was insane. I was like, man, I know you made like a reply tweet. It's like big props to Eric Bailly for kind of putting himself out there, but I mean that whole defense in itself, it looked so nonchalant. I was like, this is a Manchester derby, and some of them were just kind of wandering around. I'm like, that second goal that Man City scored is because like they just weren't like that whole Man United defense were just not on top of it. Like they weren't like kind of actively looking and trying to get the ball out of there. It was just very much like, all right, you got it. No, no, you got it. It's like literally like kind of same things we saw in the Liverpool game where it's just there wasn't anyone kind of actively hunting for the ball and kind of looking for it.
Yeah,
It's kind of like I was watching this like tactics video from Xavi while he's at Al Sadd, and then he was kind of describing he's like, pretend the ball's like your treasure, not like a bomb. But for Man United, it looked like the whole defense was like, I don't want to touch that ball. It's like don't
yeah,
even give it to me.
yeah.
So
That was a pretty bad like second goal because whether David De Gea like shouted to like stay away for the ball so he could grab it, I don't. There was just definitely like a big line of miscommunication because Harry Maguire left it, Luke Shaw left it, and that's what allowed Bernardo Silva to just do a little tap to get it past De Gea. And there was a video actually from Old Trafford. Someone took a video of De Gea when he was going through the tunnel and he like smacked like the top uh just like the thing to go into the tunnel, he like
yeah, like
smacked it
the
really hard out of
awning that like
yeah out of
extends out to the field.
yeah out
I
of
saw
like
that too.
pure frustration. And I feel really bad for him because he's been you know out of all the players that have been at Manchester United, he's been there since Sir Alex Ferguson brought him in like 2011, and he stayed with the club this whole time. I know there was that 1 or 2 seasons where there was a chance for him going to Real Madrid, but ultimately he was really close to joining them. But the whole transfer fiasco with the tax machine not, or the fax machine
Fax machine.
not processing the paper on time, which meant that he signed a long-term contract with United, and he's been basically here through all these dark periods of Louis van Gaal, the dark periods of Jose Mourinho, the upside of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and now like this down period with Solskjaer. And I do feel really bad for him because I know his form has dropped a little bit in the past couple of seasons, but ultimately he stayed loyal to the club and has kept performing and you know just kind of been there for everyone else while everyone else is kind of like either transferred away or just have done their own thing. He's been the one that stayed, and it is unfortunate to see someone like that, never seeing the benefits of staying that long. You never, not getting a trophy or, anything in return except like, getting the big contract. But it was frustrating to see. And I think there was also reports that whether these are true or not, I think partially they are true, but that a lot of the United players feel that Solskjaer plays favorites with certain players and keeps playing them. And I think that's definitely true. I think the likes of, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, there's a couple others that are going through my mind, like
I
Fred and
like Fred.
McTominay, like the McFred duo. A lot of those guys, they have been underperforming this season, yet they keep starting. They keep becoming regulars in the starting 11. But rather, it just kind of baffles me because we have the likes of Alex Telles on the bench who could come in and potentially do a job at left back. You could potentially put Donny Van de Beek, play Jesse Lingard. play like one of the McFred and then play either Donny Van de Beek or Jesse Lingard next to them to mix up the squad and see what you can get out of the players that you're not playing anymore. It just doesn't make sense why he's playing favorites with players that have just been so out of form this season, because sometimes out of form players, maybe they're just wanting to just get on it. Maybe they just want to be on the bench, because sometimes being on the bench can kind of help, kind of re-wake or kind of just help you realize like, oh crap, I'm really out of form right now. And I need to, get on my grind again, because sometimes when you just get complacent and you just keep starting the same players, the mistakes just keep happening. And I think Maguire and Shaw have been a victim of that, because they just look nothing like the players we saw in Euro 2020, where they were just, key consistent defenders for England, for the English national team. For United, they look like, you know, mid-table or, relegation level defenders at times right now with the mistakes they've been making.
And I feel like, every player goes through slumps, even like De Gea. In the past few seasons, like there's right after he didn't go to Real Madrid, there was times where it's like, all right, maybe De Gea's lost his prime. Even like 2 seasons ago, it was like, man, everything that was shot at him just went in, like P rollers, like defensive errors from or goalkeeper errors from him, like everything's going on. And then even for right now, like he's back, to old De Gea ways. But right now, as you were mentioning, is like it's Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, kind of now in something of their own. And originally going into the season, everything was looking on the upside. It was like the clouds are parting, the sun's coming out. They got Ronaldo, Bruno's coming off like a hot season, and they were just second in the Premier League. It's like everything should be looking good, but it's just the wheels have really just come off this season. And I feel like it's just kind of that loss of competition, as you mentioned, because like Donny Van de Beek, the man who's just in purgatory for just no reason at this point, just besides favoritism. And then it's just hard to explain. It's like literally you have Ronaldo and he can't carry enough to like get results every single week. And it's just right now I feel like they're just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And that's what Solskjaer's kind of doing. He's kind of like in desperation mode.
Hmm.
And this week it didn't work, obviously. But
Yeah, and the what makes it worse is that in terms of actually firing the manager or sacking the manager, a lot of people thought, okay, maybe they didn't do it for the Liverpool game because they still had the Champions League match and then the Manchester Derby and the Tottenham game. But a lot of people thought, okay, now going into the international break, a lot of teams tend to make their managerial changes during this time because it allows the manager at least a little bit more time to get settled in and um, you know, get stuck in with the players. But all the reports are right now the board wants to stick with Solskjaer, and there's been no indication from Joel Glazer, who's the head of the Glazer family, that can make that final call to sack the manager. There's no indication that he wants to do that. They want to stick with Solskjaer and ride it out and see if he can get past his minor blimp. But from the outside, literally everyone I know, Gary Neville has stayed pretty loyal to Solskjaer in terms of wanting him to stay and just giving him time. But I think so. Like Gary Neville has said that he was like that with David Moyes. He's been that with pretty much every manager besides Jose. Rio Ferdinand, however, has called out that he thinks that Solskjaer should get the sack or someone else should come in. And it is tough because I know a lot of the United pundits that are now pundits out in the broadcast world. A lot of them did play with Solskjaer back in the day, so they are good buddies with them. But I think a lot of them are starting to see that, hey, Solskjaer is a good man, but he did a really good job of getting United to where they are now, where they can start. They had the squad to compete for trophies and be a consistent player in the Premier League, but he's not the guy to take them that next step. To get them to that title. And Paul Scholes has kind of put out his worries. Rio Ferdinand has put out his worries. There's been some others. I know Roy Keane has kind of been on 50-50 and just kind of been on the swing of like Solskjaer should go. So I think a lot of people, pretty much everyone on the outside can see that Solskjaer, unfortunately, he's a good guy. He did a really good job, but it's time to move on from him and bring someone else in that can, provide that spark and also provide that clear vision on how to win a title, because unfortunately Solskjaer as a manager just can't do it. And there have been reports that apparently Ralph Ragnick, he was a German coach that actually started or he invented the Gegenpress, and Jurgen Klopp and other famous German coaches like Tuchel, Klopp, have taken Ragnick's studies and kind of implemented their own into like their managerial tactical ways. And he's kind of been like a tactical genius in the German Bundesliga. He actually coached RB Leipzig during the, I believe, 2017 or 2016 till 2019 season. He was like the RB Leipzig's manager, so he helped them through, getting close to winning the Bundesliga in the Europa League. But he was someone that has been, I guess, reported to be the manager, or come in as an interim basis. And right now he's like a sporting director with Lokomotiv Moscow. But apparently the reports yesterday or 2 days ago were that the Glazers don't want him because apparently Ragnick, if he came in, he would want full control of. He would step in as an interim manager, and then basically he would want to become the sporting director and help. Basically have full control over how United handle their transfers and like a clear footballing vision or board of like how they want to be as a football club. But of course, like the Glazers family, they don't want that. They want yes men in the board that will just like listen to whatever they say. So of course that was never going to happen, and because of that, that's not going to look likely as a hire, even though it would be a really good one, I think, on an interim basis. And right now, it's like reportedly that the United board are really keen on bringing Brendan Rodgers in from Leicester. They really like the work he's done there, and they think that he could be the man to take United to the next step. However, I think they said that maybe there's a way they could get him to come in as an interim basis, but it might have to be like they write out Solskjaer and then get Brendan Rodgers in to come in next season. But to me, I don't know if that's the right move, because I know we mentioned before that, you think Brendan Rodgers is a good manager, but maybe it's because he's at Leicester City where the expectations aren't too high. I know he won the FA Cup, and he does have that factor of winning a trophy over Solskjaer. But we saw what he did at Liverpool. But maybe it's sometimes a manager needs a second chance, and maybe he's learned a lot more at Leicester City. I know he hasn't really crossed the line in terms of getting him into the Champions League, but maybe with United's quality of players and his clear vision of playing, maybe he could be the one to take us to the next step. But I don't know. I think the United faithful at least are like at least 50-50 split on whether they're confident enough that he could be the guy to take them to the next step.
I still don't think Brandon Rogers is the right guy for like a big team. He did kind of come over that big game syndrome where I feel like he couldn't win the big games for Liverpool,
Yeah.
like in maybe like a Europa League final, or if it was a big matchup in the Premier League, it'd be like a 0-0. Like that's how like historically, Manchester United versus Liverpool games where it was always just like 0-0. But he kind of overcame that with that FA Cup win with Leicester, and I was like, all right, well, he proved himself now. But at the same time, he hasn't really played enough superstars, I feel like, on his squad to really merit and kind of show that you can immediately find success if you were to go to a Manchester United, for example, because that's what Man U need right now. They need a manager that can win right now, just because they have Ronaldo
Hmm.
and they have players kind of exiting the near ends of their prime, like De Gea as well. So it's like they can't really afford to give it a season or two. It's like, all right, they got to win it like this season or next season at least. So I don't think Brandon Rodgers is the guy. I think he'll do better than Solskjaer, but not too much better. It'll be a little tantalizing again. It'll be like, oh, he got semifinals. Oh, he got third place, second place. It'll be kind of situations like that. Because I still feel like at times he does play a little conservative
Hmm.
when it comes to like a big match or a final in terms of like formation, his starting 11. But he definitely, I feel like, won't play favorites given that there is a big famous debacle between him and Raheem Sterling back in the day. But I think for United, they're kind of in a pickle because they had Conte like on the wings, like ready to go, and then Tottenham famously yoinked them last week
Hmm.
and took that from them. So I think for United, they're just at this point, I think they should just ride it out. As a Liverpool fan, I feel like they should just keep Solskjaer, but but also at the same time, it's like they don't really have like a plan. I feel like if they were to bring someone in, it's like, is it going to be even messier? Because right now, I don't know if Solskjaer understands if he's going to stay for a while. That's why he's going to just throwing random things at the wall and kind of changing his tactics. It looks like every single game. But for like who would take his place is like, I don't know if whoever comes in even knows they're going to be the next manager.
Hmm.
Like it's like, does anyone even have a plan? Does anyone know what they're doing? And I feel like for Manchester United right now, it's just so confusing. It's just no one knows what's going on. So At this point, I think this should just be definitive and just be like, you know what? We'll just give Solskjaer the full gig. Like, because like they said that he has 3 games to save his job, and now it's been the 3 games, but like there's been no talks of like what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I feel like at this point they have to make a decision. It's like, all right, give Solskjaer the full reins for the rest of the season, and then it's like, or at least he knows at that point, all right, I can set up my tactics to not be as crazy and feel like my job's on the line, or just be like, all right, we're getting a new manager, and then just have that new manager come in and just pray.
Hmm.
But that's crazy that the former Leipzig manager is now sporting director at Lokomotiv Moscow. Of all
Yeah.
teams, Lokomotiv Moscow.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, but he's really good in terms of um, as a manager, but also like a tactical overseer of the club and kind of
Mhm.
where you want to take the football club, being that sporting director to control transfers and control how training and everything like that goes. I've just read a lot of good reports and everything on him, but I mean, I think that's been the problem. I've said before, and a lot of United fans have said before, that they just feel like there's just no plan put in place by the Glazers, and the Glazers themselves probably don't care because they got like a ton of money when they signed Ronaldo from shirt sales, and their stock price is going up. So I think for the Glazers, as long as they continue to make a ton of money and they can milk out a ton of money, they just probably don't care enough to worry about what's going on the football pitch. So um,
I forgot they have
sometimes,
stock.
yeah.
I was gonna check that. I was like,
Yeah,
what
it's
is this?
probably not doing too hot right now, but you never know with their commercial dealings that they always just get some sort of big stock to come in.
Is it Manchester PLC? Is that what it is? It's
I
just
think so.
Man U stock ticker
I think
right
so.
here.
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not
Well,
sure.
if it is, it's $16 a share, which is okay. But I mean, they hit a high over the summer of 20. I guess that's when Ronaldo came in.
Hmm.
But you know, that's just kind of goofy to see they even have stocks
Yeah,
in a
and
team.
that's just the thing. Like the Glazers, they don't make a move unless it hurts their pockets. Unless there's a fear that they won't qualify for Champions League, that's when they start making moves. Because once they don't get that Champions League money, then they start getting all scared and nervous. But that's always been the crux. I think what will be interesting if Solskjaer is the manager, I think you might see a lot of Glazers out protests going on outside Old Trafford or within the stadium, or the banners that fly through the planes. I think you could definitely see a lot of that in the coming home games for sure, because I think United fans are just really fed up with the lack of vision when it comes to the footballing side uh, of the team. But
Hmm.
that's enough
And just
for
lack aggression too.
yeah,
It's just like this. We'll give you 3 more games. It's like
yes,
why?
hesitancy. Yeah,
It's like you know what you're gonna get.
yeah. So it's
So
that hesitancy is just what's been killing them. So I don't know. We'll see. I think I've been on this rant before about Manchester United. It's just we have the players, just don't have the vision to take us forward, and I think that's the problem. But yeah, City end up winning the Derby 2-0, dominating fashion. But moving on to the West Ham Liverpool game, which actually turned into kind of a thriller. West Ham beating Liverpool 3-2, and David Moyes now has West Ham United in third place in the Premier League, which is a pretty big thing. They're kind of crashing the Premier League party. I don't know. I don't really think they're going to be consistent enough to like stay in the Premier League title race, but I think they can definitely be consistent enough to maybe challenge for top four or the fourth place, or challenge again for Europa League, because they are a very well put together side with solid players, solid formation. They have Declan Rice, who's been on fire this season, one of the best players in the Premier League. Uh, Saad Berry or Berry, how do you
Ben Rama.
yeah, Ben Rama has been really, really solid. Mikel Antonio has been solid. Kurt Zuma has been kind of a stalwart defensively for them. They just have solid players all around. They just have good quality players. West Ham do, and David Moyes has found a system that suits them. And I know he put a point here about him not getting a full season at Manchester United, and whether he should have been getting more time and more backing. This is kind of been a conversation, and I think a lot of United fans have kind of put that question out there: should he have been given more time? But ultimately, I think not, because I think David Moyes kind of falls in the same realm as maybe a Brendan Rodgers type, where West Ham, excuse me, West Ham fans, but when you start the Premier League season, your goal is to never win. The expectation is never to win the Premier League title. The expectation is like, hey, let's make sure we get in the top half of the table. And now in the recent seasons, it's like, okay, can we at least make a fight for Conference League or Europa League? And then if we get really lucky and have a really good season, it's like, oh, can we get Champions League? Like last season, there was no expectation of getting the Champions League. It was like for a couple weeks they were in the fourth place of the Champions League spots, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, they're going to get Champions League." And then you saw they started to struggle, or they made a couple errors, or you know, the thought of those big expectations kind of got to them, and they started making some silly errors to ruin their chances. And I think with David Moyes, I think that's the same predicament he's in, because when he was at Everton, it was kind of the same formula where he was never really going to challenge for the title. When you had the likes of Liverpool, United, Arsenal, Chelsea, those four teams were always going to be up there challenging for titles and being the big boys. And Everton were just there to kind of knock the big boys off their perch occasionally, or just, kind of throw in the gut punch here and there to like shake up the title race. And I think David Moyes is really good at being that type of manager, because the way he sets up his team is to kind of sit back, play on the counterattack, or occasionally play high pressing moments at certain points in the game. But when you play for a big club like Manchester United, there's the expectation that you're going to be on the front foot all the time. You're going to play attacking football. You're going to come into these big matchups with no fear and play your best team against the best opposition. And that expectation, and once you throw those expectations and kind of that big pressure, that's when you see a lot of managers kind of get scared, and they start making some weird errors, or they start doing some weird things, because all of a sudden, like when the pressure gets to you, that's when you start. That's just ultimately like how you're judged as a manager. And I think for David Moyes, in those big pressure situations, when the club were at the size of Manchester United, um, he just couldn't perform. And there was like one game against Fulham where he put in like, I think like 27 crosses, and there was 0 goals, and Fulham ended up winning, I think 2-1 or 2-0. So unfortunately, David Moyes, he's a good manager, but definitely I don't think he's good enough to be a manager for Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City, or Manchester United. I think West Ham is like the perfect level for
Man, it's like it's always those former big
him.
managers like Brendan Rodgers and now David Moyes to kind of segment into that little. It's like they're good where they are. Like this, David Moyes was made for like a West Ham kind of team,
Hmm.
and I agree. Like if you think about it, back in the days, there's this famous meme of David Moyes in his office of him just smiling at the camera, and the caption on the picture was, "I don't know what I'm doing." That literally is like how it is. But at the same time, too, there is like some merit to that kind of statement where it's like David Moyes also wasn't given like a full season and didn't get as much backing as like say Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Yet
Hmm.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has lasted 3 seasons now. He spent a buttload of money and has Ronaldo now and still kind of struggling. Yet he still is like, yeah, well, we can probably keep him.
Hmm.
And, like David Moyes is just immediately fired. So that's also the thing too. And he was also handpicked by Sir Alex Ferguson. He's like, you know what? This is my next successor, the next Scottish man to take over for me.
Hmm.
I mean, it has taken a while for David Moyes to kind of rebound from that too, because like we haven't
Yeah,
really talked about
he was
him.
at Sunderland, then he was at like Real Sociedad, right?
Yeah, Real
He,
Sociedad.
yeah, he's kind of been like thrown around the managerial, I guess, ring power, and then finally, I feel like now he finally has his full power again, because he was actually at West Ham before, saved them
Hmm.
from relegation. They were just like, no, we're not keeping you, and then they finally brought him back again.
And I'm also surprised that he's doing this well without Messi Lingard, because like literally last season, that's when their season I feel like kind of turned around. They were kind of
Hmm.
like hovering in the top half of the table, but after they got Jesse Lingard, that's when they went full power. It's like, oh, this is when they could be like a dark horse to get into the Champions League, and that's when we're just kind of joking. It's like, what if they win the title? It's like just out of the blue, random. But without Messi, Lingardinho this season, they're still right now in third place, and it really is hammer time. It's just they play so well on set pieces. It's like something I haven't really noticed with them. It's kind of like when Brighton were in the top half of the table, and I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't realize. But West Ham are doing the same thing right now, but they're just in there a little longer, third place, which is crazy to say. They're above Arsenal, they're above Tottenham, above Man U. Like they're literally, it's like they're shooting above their pay range
Hmm.
and above like their expectations. But it's just like how long they're going to be there. I don't think it's gonna be that long, but I still think it's a key to talk about the fact that they beat Liverpool 3-2,
Yeah.
and it was mainly from just being physical. It felt like it had a slight Burnley-esque kind of vibe to it, where it's just like, you know what, we're gonna beat you on set pieces and also beat you physically. Because Liverpool, I feel like at times they're just kind of out-muscled or just beaten on set pieces because, like, that's what West Ham's bread and butter was. Whereas, Liverpool, they're a lot more in terms of open play and getting goals from gegenpress and kind of catching you on a high press and then going for a quick counterattack. And for West Ham this game, and under David Moyes, they're very much like, we know we don't have as much skillful players. We don't have the high degree of players that can,
Yeah.
match up to a Liverpool side one-on-one. Like, if you were to do those kind of comparisons, there's like, all right, you have the starting 11 with the West Ham and the starting 11 of Liverpool. And then, like, which players would you pick? It's like, all right, which left winger would you pick between the two teams? It's like, it'll probably be Liverpool players across the entire thing if
Yeah.
you were to do a combined squad. But, West Ham played to their advantages. It's like, all right, we have literally Kurt Zuma and, like, Ogbonna, like, two of the biggest center backs in the Premier League. And then we have, Mikel Antonio, one of the most physical strikers up there. It's like, what can we do to, like, kind of play those strengths? And then it was from set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I will say Liverpool have been exploited with their kind of lack of defensive consistency between the past several games. Because, like, if you think about it, from that historic Liverpool run when they won the title, like, they barely conceded goals. It was like every game I feel like was almost a clean sheet.
Yeah.
But this season, they're conceding goals to Brighton. They're conceding goals to Brentford, famously, that 3-3 draw. They're conceding goals to, I mean, of course, Man City, but like in that Atletico Madrid game, that first leg.
Yeah, they were like up 2-0.
Yeah, they're up 2-0 and they conceded 2, like right immediately. I was like, what is going on? That's something that you usually wouldn't see from Liverpool side, especially with Van Dijk back.
Yeah.
It's like, what is going on? So I think that is the main thing. Is the bigger thing is Liverpool, they conceded 2, or they scored 2, and they could have won with just 2 goals. But the fact that they conceded 3 goals, like, that's kind of big against like a West Ham side who, all respect to West Ham, who are now in third. It's like Liverpool, they should not be conceding that many goals in a game at all. So there's been this kind of conversation that's kind of been brought up where, Liverpool aren't as defensively consistent, and it may be because they don't have like a Genie Wijnaldum. They don't have a player that can consistently transition them from defense to offense as well as Genie Wijnaldum did for Liverpool. And my argument, I think, for that at the beginning of the season or at the end of last season was like, well, maybe they have so many midfielders now, like Curtis Jones, Keita, or Naby Keita, and then Thiago, that, maybe without Wijnaldum, one of those players can kind of take his spot and kind of do their own thing. Might not be a complete same one-on-one or one-for-one swap where it's like, all right, Genie Wijnaldum was always like the man to do defensive switch to offense whenever they're transitioning. Maybe it'll be Curtis Jones doing something a little different, or maybe a little bit of mix where it's like Keita, I know, is a lot better in terms of just creativity. They'll bring a little something different to the team. But not having that transition player, like Fabinho hasn't been able to do it, Henderson hasn't been able to do it, it's gotten Liverpool caught a few times if the opposition were to high press, like West Ham did in this game. There were several times Mikel Antonio was like on like a runaway one-on-one with Alisson. It's just like his touch kind of got away from him. That dribbling is probably going to go down in FIFA. Like his stats are going to go down from there. But it was a little alarming. I was like, what is going on with this Liverpool defense? So it's kind of hard to kind of figure out why it's still taking this long to kind of figure out how to avoid that. But at the same time, there are little talks and rumors that Wijnaldum might come back to the Premier League, to Liverpool, because, at PSG, he's not really having a swell time.
He doesn't start that consistently. He only scored his first 2 goals actually this past week in the Champions League before the national break.
So it's like he hasn't really done as much, made as much impact as he has. It's kind of like Messi right now at PSG, where it's just like 0 league goals, 0 league assists, 7 games played, 007 right here. I saw that meme on Twitter or something, but literally it's kind of like the same situation for Ronaldo too. He's like, if Messi can do it, it's like Ronaldo not be able to do it either. And maybe he could come back for half a season and kind of be like, y'all ain't doing my job right. Losing to West Ham right now. But at the same time, you still have to give some credit to West Ham, where it's just
I
they're doing something special this season.
I
I
thought
I still don't think they're gonna stay top four, as you said.
yeah, I thought Thiago was like a Wijnaldum player where he can kind of go back and forth, like kind of be transition. Or
Yeah,
was he too attacking?
it's just also injury prone.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
think that's
man.
been a problem too. He's always been injured.
Yeah, and also I don't know. He's just a little too aggressive. He's like that dude you play pickup with that just like kind of random. He just kind of like goes in for slide tackles. Like, what is he doing? It's like he always gets a yellow card every game. I feel like so.
hmm
I don't know. And then he's just not as clinical on like the passes or like just not as precise as we see in a past Thiago at Barcelona or Bayern Munich was.
hmm
Because like even saw in the Euros this past summer, like Thiago, he gets subbed in and then just turns over the ball like 10 times. It's like,
hmm
what's going? This is not the same Thiago. It's like we don't know what's happening to him.
Yeah.
So that's the thing too. And then just Keita is just all injury prone too. And then Curtis Jones unfortunately also hit with an injury bug. So it's just of those
Well,
three players that I've
Harvey Elliott
listed.
was supposed to be that guy, right? Before he
Yeah,
got
Harvey
injured.
Elliott as well. It's just that injury bug has kind of shifted from the defense from last season now
Man.
to the midfield. Even Fabinho was out for a few. So, and then now Milner's out, the man who never gets injured. So I'm like, what is going on? So, I mean, there's slightly like a say for that too. It's like it's just injuries just hitting the midfield pretty hard this
Yeah.
season,
All the
like
run
kind
of
of
games.
sporadically.
There's too many games.
Exactly.
Manchester
Yeah, they
United
need a
been hit
break.
with the injury bug as well. I feel like
So
Chelsea have gotten lucky.
Chelsea
Besides
have gotten
Lukaku,
lucky.
like I think
Hmm.
Lukaku and Werner have been like injured every so often, but like their key midfield and defender pieces have not been injured. I don't think,
Hmm.
which is like and Man City actually. I think Man City have gotten pretty free of the injury bug as well.
But
Now
they
that I think
also Man City does have two starting 11, so I mean you
about
can never really tell
it. Yeah.
with Man City.
But I was gonna say that one quick thing is that um, Trent Alexander-Arnold, he scored a really good free kick. Pretty crazy, like he's been back in form, but the defenders in the Premier League, especially the right backs, João Cancelo, Reece James, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, they have, I believe, all of them have at least 2 goals and have multiple assists so far in the Premier League. Just pretty crazy numbers for a couple of fullbacks in the Premier League. I think it's really cool to see that, and especially how important I guess fullbacks are to the attacking side of the game now compared to maybe 10 years ago where it's more about the defensive side of the work they do. But it's good to see Trent kind of being back in like full form again because he was kind of teetering a little bit last season, but it seems like he finally has his footing again, at least attacking wise. Scoring free kicks, getting those insane crosses in, and just you know, delivering the goods for Liverpool in the attacking third.
That's a really good point to bring up. That I also saw like that stat that I think you're probably referring to the same stat that we saw like all over social media this past weekend, where it's like,
Yeah.
man, all these fullbacks are creating all the chances and are kind of scoring the goals. Like Ben Chilwell on the left back,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think it's Chelsea's highest goal scorer,
Oh yeah.
tied with
True.
Reece James. I'm like, what's going on?
That's true.
And I feel like it also kind of shows generationally how impactful the fullback position is, like right back and left back. Because even back in the day, like 10 years ago, you can think of like the best right and left backs, like Ashley Cole, Glenn Johnson. At times it was like Ivanovic for Chelsea. It's like what the heck, or like Bakary Sanya. I'm gonna throw back names. They're very much players that some of them were good at crossing, but they're very much like, all right, you're gonna stay back. You're just gonna help
Yeah.
with the defense. And even when you play rec soccer or even high school soccer, things like that, when I was growing up, that position was also like one of like the least important in my opinion. It was like, all right, we're gonna put whoever has played the least minutes in their career or like just starting, we'll put them there
hmm
because it's like all they have to do is just track down and just man mark the winger or
Yeah.
something like that. They never really move past the CDMs or like midfield line. They're always like aligned with the center backs at times. And then if they had to put in a deep cross, it'd be from pretty far back. So you would rarely see them kind of make bombing runs. And if they do, it's like, oh, they better be fast to get back. But now I feel like the fullbacks are used as like an overload where
Yeah.
it's, you have the front three, the front two, the front four at times from the midfield and attack, just always like running forward. But then if you need the extra person to kind of make that left back from the opposition team or like the center backs kind of have to decide who to defend, you bring in that fullback to kind of force the opposition defense to be like, all right, we're kind of screwed right now. Like we're being outnumbered, and that's when that fullback might have like a free shot. It's like, oh, no one's on me. All right, Reece James is just gonna rip one from the top of the box, or
Hmm.
Trent Alexander-Arnold is just gonna rip across for someone else to get the header on, and that's usually how Trent Alexander-Arnold gets so many chances created too, because like he makes those bombing runs forward and also stays up, and then it forces opposition to be like, all right, someone's gonna mark him, and then usually someone else is always free because of that,
Yeah.
and that's who Trent Alexander-Arnold usually finds, like a long pass or a cross. So like that's pretty cool to see. Is just like that position kind of growing. Because think about it now, I'm always like right and left back. It's always ah, it's
Yeah.
always like the least cool position. It's like I don't know what the equivalent is from like other sports. Maybe it's like a center for basketball, or like a wide receiver three
Yeah.
for football.
Hmm.
But it was always like it was never like the main position that everyone wants to pick. But now I'm like that. I feel like could be one of the most important positions now in
Yeah.
modern football,
Yeah,
because
because you're
it's like
seeing a lot of like even converted wingers. Like you're seeing wingers turn into fullbacks. Like I know for Real Madrid, they've been playing. Forgetting the
Lucas
winger's name.
Vasquez.
Yeah, Lucas Vasquez. Like at least Zidane was as a right back last
Hmm.
season, and we've seen it countless amount of times with like the likes of Antonio Valencia and Ashley Young being converted fullbacks, where their defensive abilities weren't the best, but they were converted there to be better attacking outlets for the team. So it's something that's definitely been a trend, and those three players have just been killing it, or those four have been just killing it on the fullback position. But I guess staying on Liverpool real quickly, I know their sporting director, oddly enough, we were talking about sporting director earlier, Michael Edwards stepping down 10 years after 10 years at the club. And then you said like Julian Ward, who's the assistant sporting director, will take over at the end of the season,
Hmm.
which is big news because, as Tyler put on the bullet points, he was Michael Edwards, at least he was kind of the main person that kind of took charge and has led this huge resurgence of Liverpool these past couple seasons.
He was basically the main sporting director under Klopp, because he was sporting director for like the past 5 years, but he was at the club for the past 10.
Hmm.
And he had a very distinct transfer policy, I would say. Like he would always get his transfers in early. It was always like, all right, we know which players are coming in, and it was also really quiet too. Like it was never the players you'd see in the transfer rumors. Like Fabinho, for example, like he just popped in. I was like, what the heck? How do we get that? That's insane. And he was also really quick just to get transfers done, because think about it, it's like Naby Keita, Fabinho, like the list goes on, and like Sadio Mane. Like you can literally list most of the starting 11 right now, and that was under Michael Edwards, and he worked his magic to bring in like world class players that no one really thought about as like kind of making that leap into being the next big thing. And he was one of the main pivot points for like why Liverpool made that jump for not even qualifying for Champions League to now consistently staying in there and fighting for the title. So he had like a letter that was kind of written out to Liverpool fans. It's just like it was kind of like a breakup almost, except it was kind of weird. It was like he kind of set a marker for him. He's like, I'll only be at the club for 10 years maximum, like no matter what. And like it hit the 10 years this upcoming year. So it was like, it's my time to leave. And his reasoning for it is because every club kind of needs a new vision he's whenever they're kind of progressing, and he feels like if he's there for too long it'll be too stagnant, too stale, and he needs to have a new individual come in or after him to kind of have that new vision, the new ideas. And he feels like that 10 years mark is like a good mark to kind of be like, all right, I've made my mark, I've made my points, I've done my work. It's time for someone else to kind of put in their own ideas.
Hmm.
And that's where Julian Ward comes in, the former assistant, or I guess he's currently still the assistant because Michael Edwards is still going to be here the rest of the season. But Julian Ward's kind of been working under him for the past few seasons, and now he's going to be taking over for him. And hopefully he kind of implements kind of like the same thinking and the same kind of what's the word for it? The
Strategy.
same strategies, yes, that kind of worked for Michael Edwards this past several seasons, but also brings in something new. because more recently I know Liverpool are also kind of bringing in more players from the academy. I was like Curtis Jones breaking through, Trent Alexander-Arnold back in the starting 11 since he was just like a wee lad from the academy, and now he's just basically a consistent starter,
Hmm.
and that's pretty key too. So hopefully, kind of like a mix of those two kind of bring in. But that's just kind of wild to even hear. It's like usually you don't hear someone stepping down from a position if they're finding success.
Yeah.
Usually it's from they're struggling, they made a few bad transfers, Liverpool or like fighting relegation, something like that, or like they're not getting into the European competitions. That's
Yeah.
when you start seeing people get fired. But Michael Edwards, he decided it's like my time is now, and that's just wild to see. It
Hmm.
was really sad for Liverpool fans across the board to be like, oh man, we're losing a really good sporting director. Because I know you rant about yours, man. You all the time is like, please leave Ed Woodward. Gosh dang. So seeing a good ones kind of step down, it was. I I don't know how Liverpool are going to do it, but at the same time, maybe having a new vision, a new sporting director come in could maybe help sustain Liverpool because you know there is that point where it was really hard for Liverpool to get back in the Champions League, get back to winning a title,
Hmm.
get back to finally winning a Champions League. But since then, they've kind of been teetering from injuries and also this season as well, just lack of defensive consistency and maybe having a new sporting director kind of come in. It's like, all right, what can we bring in to kind of help with the team to kind of sustain success? Maybe that could be a good transition now for like a Julian Ward, or
Hmm.
it's like Michael Edwards was here to help bring us back into success, and then maybe a new sporting director can help sustain it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just all theory right now. We're gonna see how it goes, but
Yeah.
that's just how it is for me. It's
Yeah.
just kind
Let's
of
see.
hard news to hear.
I think Liverpool are pretty good, like pretty well run clubs. So I think they probably. I don't think this is probably out of the blue, like retirement or him stepping down. I feel like these talks have been ongoing within high level officials at Liverpool for a while. So I think they just from the outside looking in, I think they're a pretty well run club. So I think they definitely know what they're doing, and this was a move they probably planned for and something they've been looking at for a while now. So I think they'll be in a good spot. And like you said, sometimes that new energy or that new vision and leadership can sometimes bring some good changes because sometimes it can shake things up, and sometimes things could get a little complacent, and that shake up can help boost boost everyone up. So we'll see. I think Liverpool will be fine, but it's definitely a key note to kind of put out that he was kind of the mainstay for Klopp in terms of bringing all the big players in that you see now in Liverpool starting 11. So we'll
Mhm.
see. We'll see what happens. But a team that I would say needs to go through that or has been going through that or will be going through that is Newcastle. They finally got their new manager, Eddie Howe, after reports were that Unai Emery could be interested in the project. He essentially just turned them down a week and a half ago, and they turned their efforts to Eddie Howe. And it looked like that it wasn't going to happen at one point because he couldn't get his back staff to be finalized, but everything went through. Eddie Howe is now the new Newcastle manager, and now his first mission is to get Newcastle United out of the relegation zone. And right now, that's going to be a really tough task because they have been teetering. And Eddie Howe, as we mentioned, you remember his last time in the Premier League with Bournemouth when he was in the relegation battle, he just could not do enough to get them out of it. He just kept staying in that, that relegation fight. But the good side of Eddie Howe was that he did a really good job with Bournemouth. He was kind of one of the hot young managers in the Premier League for his first, I would say, 3 seasons at Bournemouth, where people were talking about could he be, the next person to take over Arsene Wenger? Could he be, at Tottenham? Could he get a chance at the Leicester City job? I mean, his name was kind of out there, like a buzzy name. And then once he got relegated, that kind of that luster of Eddie Howe kind of went away. But as we've seen from his time at the Premier League, he does have a very clear vision of playing attacking football, not being afraid, and no matter who the competition is, and kind of getting the most out of random players, some young youth products, and just kind of maximizing the talent in his squad. So I think Newcastle have a pretty talented squad. So I think the likes of Miguel Almiron and Alan St. Maximum and Callum Wilson are going to really thrive under Eddie Howe. So it'll be exciting to see if Miguel Almiron can actually um, perform to the Atlanta United level of Miguel Almiron right now.
And then Ryan Fraser is reunited back with his old manager Eddie Howe,
Yeah.
who he's trying to leave. in the first place. So I mean, that's gonna be a little awkward, but maybe it will kind of revitalize his career as well because Ryan Fraser is one of at one point he had the most assists in one of
Yeah.
his prime seasons at Bournemouth.
Yeah.
And Eddie Howe was also the main man who helped bring Bournemouth up like 4 tiers of
Yeah.
English football. So if that has anything to do with it, I was surprised that he was like out of work for the past year and a half at this point,
Mm-hmm.
where he was basically a hot name, but then right after he was kind of on everyone's ears, and then Bournemouth got relegated, and he's like, all right, and everyone just kind of forgot about him.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, it's just one that one kind of big season for them just to get relegated. I mean, it's a terrible thing to happen, but I mean, at the same time, it's like you kind of have to remember all the things he did before that. And Eddie Howe coming as Newcastle manager, I feel like it's also the right culture set for Newcastle. I feel like this is a big move in terms of like what kind of vision Amanda Stavely and them want, and like the Saudi Arabians, I guess, want for the club, because I feel like he would be one of those managers that would try to develop players and kind of be one with the locker room rather than kind of one of the more stoic managers that's just like, I'm here to kind of do the job and kind of get the job done and get the results. But I feel like Eddie Howe puts a step above that by kind of making sure the players are like, all mentally there, kind of bringing out the most of like the smaller players, as you mentioned, kind of like those random players you never really think about, like Stanislas, for example, back in the
Mm-hmm.
Bournemouth days, or Arthur Boric, that
Oh
keeper.
yeah.
It's
He had
always
like
like the
Nathan
random,
Ake being like one
yeah,
of the hot
Nathan
center
Ake,
backs. Man.
and like it's all of these players. It's like
Joshua King too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then now it's like most of those players from that starting 11 in the Bournemouth side, you don't even hear about him anymore. He's like, you probably haven't heard the name Stanislas for like since they were
That's a
relegated.
throwback. I haven't heard that name in forever.
So I think Eddie Howe can kind of maybe even bring out a player that's been in Newcastle purgatory that we haven't heard out from the grave, and then maybe bring out the most of them, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
revitalize a career like Ryan Fraser or
Yeah.
Almiron. So I'm really excited for this move for Eddie Howe and Newcastle. I think it's a really good match in heaven, but results are a big thing, obviously, for football. That really determines how well someone really does. You can't be like, oh, they're doing great, they're feeling great, they're looking great, and then they're just, it's like that meme of that guy who wins like third place in the Olympics or something, and he's just like celebrating champagne and everything, and everyone's just looking down from the higher ends of the podium and him just celebrating being in third. Whereas for Newcastle, they got to get out of relegation, and if they play good football and all that and they still get relegated, then there's really no point. So
Yeah.
they still got to get the results and get at least 17th place. Ideally higher, but
Mm-hmm.
beggars can't be choosers. And I feel like coming in at week 11 or 10 of let me see. Yeah, week 12 of the Premier League. It's basically 1/3 into the season, so he still has a lot of time to kind of save them, but it's going to be a tall ask because at the same time, you are inheriting a Newcastle side that's always been struggling with relegation, and that
Yeah.
has to do with talent as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I feel like I'll just say this. I don't know. I'll say this. I don't think Eddie Howe can do enough to keep Newcastle up this season. Um, I think with everything that went down, it would just be hilarious for my end to just see them get relegated with all the money they've invested, because I think that would just be hilarious. But I don't think I just don't think he'll do enough, unfortunately, to keep Newcastle up, because yeah, I'll just stick to it. I don't think I need to have a reason. I'm just gonna go for. I don't think he'll do enough to keep them up.
I mean, I can see that happening too. It's just it'll be hard. I don't know if it's too early to even see what kind of owners that new board and Amanda Stavely are going to be. Is like, if they do get relegated, do they keep Eddie Howe? Kind of like when Newcastle got relegated a few seasons ago
Oh
with
yeah, with
Rafa Benitez.
Benitez, they kept
Benitez
Rafa.
stayed,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh yeah, thank you for staying," and then they brought him back immediately. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but like that's why I'm saying, like, if they can get 17th, then that's ideal
Mm-hmm.
at the bare minimum, because Newcastle, I think, are going to be struggling, and the main thing is like, can they beat out a Burnley and Watford? Like Norwich is for sure going to get relegated, like
Yeah.
100%. But the other two that will be
I think
joining
I
them.
think I trust Sean Deitch to just do enough to like maybe sneak out some crazy results here and there because he's been
They
proven.
usually do, but it's just this season so far, they haven't been like the same Burnley as they were in the
Hmm.
past. Like Tarkowski hasn't, this is gonna be a whole other conversation, but Burnley hasn't been as great. But I feel like that Watford side, they can slip into that relegation zone. Maybe that could be that third team. So
Hmm.
that's what I'm saying. But Eddie
Yeah,
Howe, great move.
yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes with Eddie Howe. Obviously, he still hasn't had his first match yet. We're still in international break, and we'll see how. Actually, the first match is against Brentford, so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But um, overall, good move. I just don't think it's going to help them in terms of staying up in the Premier League. I think the damage has been done. But one last tidbit before we, I guess, sign off is that Wrexham United have been bought by Ryan Reynolds and Rob. How do you say his
McElhenney.
yeah, McElhenney.
Yeah. Basically
Um,
Mac from Always Sunny.
yeah, I haven't actually I haven't watched Always Sunny. I need to.
Great
I
show.
yeah I like what's his name, Charlie Day. I like
Yeah,
him as an
Charlie
actor.
Day.
Yeah, he's funny. I haven't had a chance to watch that show. I need to watch it. But Ryan Reynolds, obviously famous actor. Deadpool. He plays Deadpool, and obviously he's been in a ton of other movies and films. So really famous. A couple famous actors. They actually bought the club. So as Tyler mentioned, it's like real life career mode.
Yeah. It's like a random Welsh club, and they recently bought him, and they're the more involved owners. They said like one of like the first days they were there, they kind of showed up and kind of went into the town and had drinks with all the fans and everything. I'm like, that's you never really hear of owners going in and kind of being
Yeah.
one with the fans. And I forgot if they're gonna have like a series or something kind of documenting this, but I just found it so goofy to see is like Deadpool and Mac from Always Sunny. Just they have a club now
I
and
wonder
they're
how much
running it
it costs
together.
to buy it. I don't
I
know
think it
what.
was really compared to Premier League clubs,
Yeah,
it's still a lot of money in relative terms as like a normal human being with an
yeah,
average salary. But I think it was 2 million or something like that. It was
yeah.
it was not like a three
Compared to
hundred
like
million
2 billion
pound move.
from like
Yeah,
Manchester United or
or like
something.
Arsenal, like kind of
Yeah,
like one of those takeovers. So this was a lot smaller of a side, and like if you look at their stadium, it's kind of like the capacity is probably like 10K
yeah.
people
That
at
is
most.
cool. That is cool though, because I know Jamie Vardy. He actually I don't know if he's a complete new owner, but he did purchase a stake into a club and actually in New York City. Not NYCFC, but it was like a small uh division club in New York, a
Mm,
soccer club there. So it's pretty cool. I know Jamie Vardy's done it. I know a couple other players um, have done. I know Patrick Mahomes. He's bought like a small stake in the Sporting KC, the MLS
yeah.
side. I know James Harden bought some for like Houston Dynamo. So like, there's a lot of famous athletes that,
Yeah,
or
LeBron owns Liverpool, part
yeah,
of
yeah.
Liverpool's
Braun
stake.
Braun owns a stake in Liverpool. So it's pretty cool to see, I guess, famous athletes or actors, from all across the world just kind of come in and put their stake into a club. But actually, if they do put their stake in the club, actually like go out of their way to care and look out for it and not just look at it as like some investment portfolio thing, investment
Hmm.
property type thing.
And what made this one a little different is just like they had promos and like videos for them taking over the club. They had like a full trailer. It's like, all right, I'm Ryan and I'm Rob, and now we're owners of Wrexham United. And then people in the chat, like, or in like the comments, are like it's always like Mac from Always Sunny. The whole premise of the show is just like it's very satirical and like ironic. So it was like Rob kind of came in and is like, we're gonna come in and save the club, and then someone put in the comments like the gang ruins Wrexham United. It's like something like that happens. So um, it's gonna be interesting to see how this goes because I feel like that's kind of like a dream for like people like us is like just to own a club like this or like
Mhm.
just say you're an owner of a club. So it's kind of cool to see like someone that I feel like everyone knows, at least for Deadpool, like Ryan Reynolds, is like the now owner of a football club.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
you know, maybe
It's
we'll hear about them more in the future or again, but that's kind of just random news out there.
Yeah, that'd be
Random
cool.
tidbits to throw out there.
That'd be cool if they continue to improve. Like, you can make minor improvements to the stadiums, bring in like kid sponsors. I don't. It's like, yeah, like you said, it's just straight up real life career mode. See what you can do.
Exactly. You can bring in the Burger King logo
Yeah.
on the
Except
jersey.
there's like real life consequences if you don't win, you lose money. So, which that's the down part. But hey, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have a decent amount of money to be able to even afford this, investment. So they should be fine.
True.
Yeah, but it was that's a really cool note that you found. I think I remember hearing about it, but I didn't remember the actual club they bought. So that's really cool that they were um able to do that. So that's awesome. But
Mm.
yeah, like we said, we're recording this during international break, so there are no upcoming league fixtures, no Premier League fixtures. So that kind of wraps up season 4, episode 131 for us. As we always say, you can follow us on social media at Twitter and Instagram at the Premier Pod. You can also watch the video versions of this podcast on YouTube at the Premier Pod. And if you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a rating and review. It helps us out, helps us get boosted, and helps us get noticed from other people out there. But if you don't want to leave a review, simply just taking the time to listen is more than enough. And if you want to share this podcast with a friend that's interested in the Premier League, that's also a big help. Any support we get is definitely appreciated. But as we always say, that kind of wraps up season 4, episode 131 for us. Thank you guys so much for listening. Peace.
Peace.